Every year, more than 5 million truck drivers crisscross America's highways, hauling everything from groceries to steel beams. Together, they log over 300 billion miles annually. That's billions of hours spent alone in the cab, watching the world roll by mile after mile. Most nights are uneventful, just asphalt, coffee, and the hum of diesel. But sometimes, the road gives back more than just scenery. Sometimes, it whispers stories of strange encounters, impossible sightings, and things that can't be explained by weather or fatigue. Here on Voices from the Other Side, we bring you those stories, true accounts from the men and women who live their lives on the road. If you enjoy hearing these voices, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps others discover the hidden world just beyond the headlights. Tonight's tale comes from a seasoned driver on an old stretch of Route 66, where a midnight storm turned an ordinary haul into an unforgettable brush with the impossible. This is the Phantom Hitchhiker on Route 66. I've been driving long enough to know the difference between a lonely night and a bad one. Lonely is when the CB goes quiet for an hour, and the only company you've got is the thrum of your engine and the blinking red beacons of a distant radio tower. Bad is when the weather closes in, the road narrows to a ribbon of glare, and you start thinking about all the crosses you've passed on the shoulder, little white markers for people who weren't as lucky. This night was both. It was late spring, the kind of storm that crawls out of the desert with its back hunched, dragging wind and static behind it. I was on an old section of Route 66 in western Oklahoma, one of those stretches that feels like a memory more than a road, sidestepped by the interstate, still clinging to a couple gas pumps and a diner that serves pie even after the coffee goes stale. My dispatcher had begged me to shave an hour by skipping I-40. I owed him a favor, so I took the older way, the romantic way, the one tourists photograph at noon but truckers curse at midnight. Thunder had been skittering around the horizon for an hour. Lightning showed me the land like a flashbulb, stacks of hay bales under tarp, a windmill that hadn't turned in years, a billboard peeling into black strips, the vowels of some long-gone motel name tugged off by a patient son. I had the wipers at full tilt, and still the rain kept outrunning them, sheets and ropes and needles. My phone had 1 bar of service. The CB was mostly static, and I was thinking about pulling into the next service station I saw, anywhere with a roof and a hot drink, when my headlights found her. She stood just beyond the throw of the old neon sign, Gas Oil Cola, the letters bleeding in the rain. The station itself was a ruin, 2 pumps leaning like drunks, the roof of the canopy crumpled, the store door boarded and painted with a crooked "no entry." But there she was at the edge of it, a young woman in a pale sundress that ended midway down her shins, hair tucked behind her ears like she was ready for church. Bare arms, bare legs, bare head, thumb out like an old postcard image, and dry. I know how that sounds. The dress wasn't clinging to her, didn't have dark rain spots, no mascara tracks, no mud on her calves. Bone dry in a storm that had water crawling across the asphalt like snakes. I eased off the throttle. I didn't stop. Company policy is crystal: no hitchhikers. Not in 2025, not ever. But she stepped forward into my lights as if she knew my brakes better than I did, and I saw her face. She wasn't a kid exactly, early 20s maybe. But she had that nothing bad has ever happened look you hope your own daughter keeps forever. She lifted her hand, not a frantic wave, Just a small, careful signal like she was used to minding her manners. I told myself I'd pull even with her and let the moment decide. If she looked dangerous, and how would that even look? I'd roll on, but I was already slowing, already tapping the four-ways out of habit. The cab filled with the metronome click, click, click. When I stopped beside her, I reflexively reached across and thumbed my passenger door lock. The one habit every trainer drills into you and you keep even when it feels rude. Then I cracked the window 2 inches. "You okay?" I called over the drumming rain. She leaned in without leaning in. That's the only way to put it. She didn't bend, didn't press her face toward the crack, but somehow her voice slid clean through the noise. "I need to go home," she said. "Are you headed west?" Her voice was soft, unaccented, like somebody from an old radio show back before anyone swore on air or let their vowels get lazy. I found myself glancing at the useless clock on the dash, then back at her. "Where's home?" She turned her head and pointed down the road, more darkness, more rain. "A few miles, past the little bridge. You cross the creek, then the old pecan grove. I can show you." "That's not a street name. It's the Evans place," she said. "Everybody knows the Evans place." I didn't, of course, but I knew the math. Young woman, storm, miles of empty road. I pictured my ex-wife giving me the look she saved for when she thought I'd forgotten my heart somewhere between Billings and Amarillo. I pictured my boss frowning at a policy form. I pictured a TikTok clip of an idiot driver who let danger climb into his cab with its shoes off. "Company rules say I can't let you ride up here," I said. "But I've got a step on the passenger side and the door handle's high. I could ride slow and you could hang on while." She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just placed her hand on the door lightly, like she was playing a note on a piano I couldn't hear. "I can sit on the step," she said. "I've done it before." Before I could say no, I heard myself popping the lock. The door swung open. The rain's sound didn't change. She placed one foot on the step as neat as a dancer, dress hardly moving, and caught the grab bar with her left hand. Her right hand rested on the door frame. Her bare feet should have squeaked or slid, but they didn't. I inched forward. "What's your name?" I asked, mostly to anchor things to something normal. "Leela," she said after a breath. "Leela me." "Okay, Leela me, I'm Ray Coleman." "Thank you, Mr. Ray, you don't have to Mr. me." She didn't answer, and I told myself it was because the wind came around the nose of the truck just then, pushing at us, wet and cold and heavy. I kept it under 20. We rolled past the gas station and its dead neon, and the night closed back in, as if the ruin was a lighthouse and now we were away from its glow. Every few seconds the lightning would give the land back to me. Barbed wire mesquite, a mailbox that looked like a rusted bread loaf, then snatch it away again. "You said a bridge?" asked. "Just a little one." "How far?" "Not far," she said. "We passed it already." I glanced right, expecting to see the creek sliding alongside us, but there was only the dark shoulder and a ditch that bloomed with weeds whenever the lightning did its trick. "What about a street sign? The Evans place, does it have a number?" "Never needed one," she said. "Everybody knows it." "Everybody," I repeated, starting to feel the outline of something I couldn't name. She was quiet for a while, and when she spoke again, her voice had the smallest tremor in it, like someone turning down the volume on a record. "You get a lot of storms." "Enough," I said. "More in spring. Hail sometimes. Tornadoes if God's in a mood." "This one feels like it won't end," she said, almost to herself. "Like the clouds forgot how." We rolled past a dark farmhouse crouched under a giant oak, a scarecrow bent double like it was listening to secrets in the soil. "Is that?" "No," she said. "Keep going." The road narrowed to a lane and a half, then widened again. My GPS map was a gray sheet with a thin blue snake that maybe had been drawn by a bored child. Service dropped to 0 bars. The CB popped once, twice, as if trying to cough up a word and failing. I don't know why I asked what I asked next. Maybe to feel the shape of her story. Maybe to hear a lie or a truth. "What's waiting at home, Leela?" She looked out into the rain. "Mom has biscuits," she said. Lace curtains she made out of a pattern she found in a magazine. My daddy pretending to read the paper, watching the road instead. The truck shuddered. I gripped the wheel. She went on. "Sometimes my brother would put a frog in the wash basin. He'd swear it just jumped in by itself." She smiled then, not on her mouth exactly, but somewhere around her eyes. And I felt it, the ache people get when they talk about a small and perfectly carried thing. "How long you been away?" I asked. "A while," she said. "How far'd you go?" "All the way," she said softly. "Farther than I wanted, but not as far as I deserved. Lightning, a stand of pecan trees shouldered together like conspirators. There," she said and pointed, "turn by the grove." There was no road sign. There was barely a road, just 2 pale ruts stitched through the grass. I grumbled something about trailers and mud and a mud flap I'd just replaced, but my hands were already turning the wheel. We slipped off Route 66, the old tires finding the old ruts with a confidence that didn't feel like mine. I crawled. The pecans closed over us, branches knitting a ceiling, the rain coming down in points instead of sheets. I told myself the step was slick, and that she needed both hands to hold on, and that was why she didn't knock to be let inside. I told myself there was a sensible reason my heart had started a clumsy double beat. When the trees opened, I saw the house. Once upon a time, it had been white. You could see the bones of it. 2 stories, porch with a swing, windows in a neat grid. But fire eats everything that makes a house kind. What remained was a husk, warped and blackened, the roof caved, the porch like a jaw with teeth broken and burned. Somebody had strung a length of sheriff's tape through the front yard long years ago. Now it flapped like a tired ribbon from a baton nobody wanted to carry. I braked. The 4-ways clicked. In the glass of the windshield, the ruin reflected like a photograph of someone else's mistake. "Leela," I said, my mouth dry in a way rain can't fix. "This is home," she said. I cut the engine without meaning to. Silence gathered, a big country silence, the kind that swallows the tail of thunder and lets you hear rain ticking on metal, ticking on ash, ticking on leaves. Somewhere a tree frog tried a few notes like it was testing a mic. "You don't have to come farther," Leela said. "Thank you for the ride." You want me to call somebody?" I asked. "I can't get a signal out here, but I could go back to town and—" "No," she said. "I'll be all right." She put her foot down from the step. Bare skin met wet grass. There was no splash. She let go of the grab bar and smoothed her dress as if it mattered. Then she did something I still dream about. She turned and looked at me with an expression I've only seen on faces in old picture frames, something flat and patient and stubborn, the look people wore when they thought a camera might steal a piece of their soul and they wanted to keep it anyway. "Could you wait a minute?" she asked. "Why?" "I forgot something," she said. "I always forget something." Before I could answer, she walked toward the house. Not quickly, not slowly. Just a steady pace like people who have made their mind up. The rain didn't touch her. The hem of her dress brushed scorched boards that should have snagged cotton and left threads, but it didn't. She stepped up onto the porch that didn't look like it could hold a cat and crossed to the front door, or where the door had been. She paused there, head bent like she was listening to a voice through the wood. Then she vanished. It wasn't a trick of light. It wasn't a blink. She simply wasn't there anymore, and the doorway was only a black square with rain in it. I sat very still. The wipers were frozen mid-arc. The heater fan was off, though I hadn't turned it. The four-ways kept their patient clicking like a heartbeat you can't control. I realized I had my hands braced on the wheel so hard my wrists ached. You can get out. That's what my head said. You can go knock on what's left of the door like a fool and call a girl's name you don't know. You can step up where the floor is weak and find yourself in a pit of char and nails and old sorrow. I put the truck back in gear and eased forward 10 feet, then 20, then turned. The trailer carving a clumsy arc in the grass, pecan leaves slapping the side panels and leaving no marks. When I reached the ruts again, I took them back to the highway. On the main road, the rain had softened to a steady drum. The storm's anger had moved on to frighten some other county. I pushed west until the yellow sign for a diner swam up, Mabel's, with a pink neon coffee cup steaming above the A. It had that look the good ones have, pickups in the lot, a state trooper car out front, tugging your mind toward eggs and refuge. I parked and went in, damp car heater smell glued to my clothes. The bell on the door chirped. A handful of locals looked up. The trooper lifted a chin at me, one of those small-town nods that counts as a hello and a question. I nodded back and took a stool at the counter. The waitress was 50 or 70. It's hard to tell with people who laugh a lot out where the weather does work on your face. Her name tag said Nora. Coffee. She asked like it would be a mercy no matter what I said. Please. You look like something the rain wouldn't spit out, she added, amused but kind. I wrapped both hands around the mug when she set it down. The warmth shook something loose in me. The story wanted to pour out, so I let enough of it go that I didn't sound insane. A girl, a storm, an old house. I kept it simple. I didn't say vanished. I didn't say dry. I didn't say the name. Nora listened. Then she did that thing waitresses do, wiping a clean spot on the counter to buy time. You say Grove of Pecans? She asked. Yeah, little bridge over Clover Creek. That's the one. She and the trooper traded a look that had miles in it. The trooper set his coffee down and swiveled on the stool. You turned at the Evans place, he said. I didn't answer because I didn't know how. Old farmhouse burned in 78, Nora said gently, as if telling a child the dog really had run away. Faulty wiring, they said, but people have their stories. Family got out except for the daughter. Leela Mee Evans, sweet thing, was supposed to get married in June. Fire was in April. The trooper nodded like he'd counted those months too. Folks say after a storm you might see her out on the old highway, he said. Some people give her a lift. Some just pass on, pretending they don't. Either way, she always makes it home. Home, I repeated, and the word felt both smaller and bigger than it had in my mouth at the house. Nora poured me more coffee I didn't ask for. You didn't do wrong stopping, she said. You didn't do right or wrong, you just were there. People really see her? I asked. Like really? Nora shrugged, which in this part of the country counts as a thesis. People see what they need. Sometimes it's a stray dog. Sometimes it's a cross on the shoulder you hadn't noticed. Sometimes it's a girl who never made it out. The trooper sipped and studied me over the rim. My advice, he said, is you stick to the interstate when the weather turns. Route 66 is beautiful in the books. At night, it's got a way of handing you the past. A farmer at the end of the counter said without looking up, and the past don't care if you got miles to make. Everybody laughed softly at that, the kind of laugh that has a funeral in it somewhere. I ate a slice of pie because it was there and because it felt like something to hold. The sugar steadied me. When I paid, Nora slipped a napkin across the counter with a still damp pen note. Clover Creek, right arrow left at Grove, right arrow don't. I folded it into my wallet because people in certain parts of the world give you charms when they don't have words that fix anything. Back in the cab, the air felt close. I started the engine, the familiar vibration settling the shake in my hands. The wipers swiped once out of habit. I checked my mirrors and the empty lot and the sky, now just a tired gray. I took I-40 the rest of the night, missed an appointment window, ate the late delivery fee. No one got fired, no one even yelled. It was a week before I told anyone else in the company. It was a month before I stopped waking up at 3 convinced there was a young woman on the passenger step waiting to be taken home again. And it was never before the day I stopped for a thumb on the shoulder of a road, even on the sunniest afternoon. I wish I could say I picked better, or called in, or found a way to be both human and safe. The truth is simpler and worse. I stopped altogether. I still run west sometimes. The sky out there is a big platter and the wind mills its corners, and the light does a thing to the metal of your hood that makes you think about new paint. I pass the exit for the old highway and I keep going. If there's a storm in the forecast, I keep 2 exits between me and any old neon that could be telling the truth in a way I can't bear to hear. Every now and then, usually in the run-up to spring, when the red dirt loosens and the thunder has its first practice, I see a white shape at the edge of my headlights, and my foot goes heavy without deciding to. But it's always a fence post or a feed bag caught on a strand of barbed wire, flapping like a dress that has no one in it. The CB crackles on static nights. The road hums its old hymn. I drive and I try not to think about the girl who made it home, not because I don't want her there, but because I do. Story 2, CB Radio Copycat, Nevada Desert. I've always said the desert at night has 2 kinds of silence. There's the kind that relaxes you, cicadas sawing the heat in half, far-off headlights stitched like beads on a velvet string, your tires humming a lullaby to the center line. And then there's the other kind. The kind that feels like standing in an empty church after midnight. No sound, just a pressure in the air that makes you swallow and wonder if you're the only one breathing. The Nevada run can give you both in a single hour. This was late summer, a Monday bleed through into Tuesday, somewhere between Tonopah and the long nothing that eventually turns into Winnemucca if you keep your foot in it. I was hauling agriculture gear, disc harrows and a crate of bearings, light enough to float at 62 without the engine complaining. The sky was moonless and fat with static, the kind of night the CB usually wakes up, drivers griping about way stations, warning of a trooper tucked behind a mile marker, asking if the cafe in Fallen still does pie. I'd been talking more than I usually do. Maybe it was the coffee working a groove in my ribs. Maybe I just didn't want to be alone with the dark. I told a story about a steer that got loose on a Texas ramp and held up traffic like a union boss. I recited my dumb rule about burritos. If the tortilla cracks when you pick it up, throw it out because that's how God tells you to live another day. I even read the bumper sticker I'd just seen. If you can read this, thank a teacher. If you can read this in the dark, thank a trucker. Got a couple chuckles for that one. It felt good. Human. By midnight, the chatter thinned. I clicked over to scan and settled on channel 19, the old faithful of trucker noise. Then let her hiss while I watched for jackrabbits suicidal enough to turn themselves into bad luck. That's when I heard myself. 10-4, I'll ride the knife at 62. No sense waking the bears for nothing. The radio said, exact words. Exact lazy way I drag the word bears when I mean highway patrol. Exact breathy laugh on the tail. I glanced at the mic like it had spoken out of turn. My hand wasn't even near it. I reached anyway, thumbed the transmit just to feel the button and let go. Static. Desert sand quiet. Maybe somebody recorded me. Some gadget monkey with a new toy. Maybe a skip. Weird reflections happen at night. CBs can throw your voice around like a frisbee if the ionosphere's in a mood. I've caught Arkansas preachers on Channel 19 while idling in Idaho once. It's a thing, it just didn't feel like that. A minute later, my voice came back. Copy that, I'll grab the chevron in Lovelock if the coffee doesn't taste like pennies tonight, it said. I had said that. Not tonight earlier, passing through weeks back. That exact complaint, pennies, like copper coins melting down your throat. I clicked up to 17, which I use when 19 gets clogged with lonely men and bad advice. Anybody hearing a parrot on 19? I asked. Sounded like me, which I don't recommend. A laugh came back, 2 different drivers, a quick chorus of copy, and you got a stalker friend, and then someone with a Carolina drawl said, "You're fine, Montana. Skip spicy tonight." I caught a high school football game half an hour ago, station ID out of Amarillo. Go figure. I let it go. I told myself to let it go. The highway unrolled like a long black tape measure. I drifted past a reflector post that had been nailed on crooked, past a shoulder cross with plastic flowers bleached to ghost pastel. A mile marker, 147, flicked by like a tooth in a grin. Then the radio cracked again and I heard something that wasn't mine. "Knock it down a gear, Ray," my voice said. "You always miss the trap at 149 if you stay high. Ray is my name. Not my handle, not something I use on the CB unless I forget myself. And 149 is where the state likes to sit up on the rise with a pair of eyes like binoculars and a ticket pad warmed up. I know that because I've been pinched there, twice. Cute, I said out loud to no one. You got a scanner, big man. You got my DOT pulled up. You wanna read my social too. I thumbed the mic. All right, cutie pie. You had your fun. Find another voice to play with. What came back wasn't laughter. It was me again, but wrong. Hollow, like my mouth was full of dry ice. Raymond Allen Coleman, it said. Billings, Montana, 2 points off your license for that second pinch. You told them you were late to your mother's appointment. She never had one. I keep my mother's life out of my cab, on purpose. She doesn't use the internet. She doesn't own a phone that knows what a browser is. And I didn't tell anybody about any appointment. I said family appointment, vague as you please, because I'm not a liar by nature and I don't like getting good at it. Who is this? I asked because that's what you ask when the hair goes up on your arms. You a trooper playing with a toy. You a bored kid parked outside a truck stop with mom's laptop. Silence. And then like a delayed echo bouncing off the inside of my skull. Burrito rule. Throw it out if the tortilla cracks. Live another day. I killed the CB. Slapped the power knob so hard the plastic squeaked. The sudden absence of noise poured into the cab like cold water. It took me a full minute to realize I was breathing too loud, and that if the glass fogged up, I'd blame the radio for that too. Up ahead, the orange bulbs of a way station glowed on the right, a low run of sodium lights hanging above a concrete island. The sign, "All commercial vehicles must enter when flashing," wasn't flashing. The lot looked mostly dead, but the overhangs were lit and the office had a rectangle of tired fluorescence. I'd never seen this one open. It was one of those portable deals they drag around like a carnival. I could have bypassed it clean. I didn't. Something about other people's light, even government light, felt like a handrail. I pulled onto the exit lane, checked my mirrors out of reflex. That's when the night got weird. In the left mirror, the highway was empty, no headlight bloom, no running lights stacking up behind me. In the right mirror, a shape came over the rise, a pair of lamps growing. A rig. No, my rig. The exact same pattern of roof lights. The exact same placement of my company's tiny ID stickers on the fender. The exact same smudge of road film cutting a diagonal across the bumper where I hit a line of grasshoppers 2 days back. For a second, I thought it was a reflection in the glass. Then it blipped the marker lights twice. My habit, a joke I do for the kids when I'm pulling into the driveway back home. 2 blips means I'm about to honk the little novelty horn I told their mother I took off years ago. 2 blips is Dad's home. I hadn't done it in months. The ramp split. I took the scale lane, rolling across the platform like a man trying not to wake a baby. The screen read my gross, light tonight, I told you, and told me to proceed. I trundled forward under the canopy and into the open lot where you park if a man in a jacket tells you to pop your hood. No man, no jacket, just me and my heartbeat and the tassel of moths trying to end their lives against a sodium bulb. And the other truck, it rolled into the lot and curved left. I curved right because that's the way the arrows went, and also because the thought of turning the same way made my teeth set. We met nose to nose by the office, 50 feet apart, metal bodies breathing. I knew my truck like I know the lines on my palm. The Freightliner badge slightly off true from the factory. The sun-faded triangle of paint where a magnetized wide load sign lived last summer. The nick in the chrome on the right horn cover. This was all of that. The company logo, blue script over a plowed field, looked hand-lettered because my boss paid extra to make it look that way. The trailer had a streak where a strap had danced loose and slapped until I cinched it at the last stop. My strap, my mistake. I could see my own face in the other windshield, warping and straightening as the glass curved. It was like staring at a department store mirror that had opinions. And there was no one in the cab, no silhouette, no hat, no bobbing nod of a driver's head. The driver's seat was empty, belt slack, curtain pulled halfway back. The passenger seat had a coffee cup, one of those cheap styrofoam ones with the brown ring design, sitting in a little puddle of its own sweat on the plastic. There was no steam rising. I put my truck in neutral and set the brake out of habit, though every bit of me wanted my right foot ready. I opened the door and climbed down into the buzz. The air smelled like hot dust and warm wiring. The only sound was a little metal rattle from the canopy as it ticked itself cool. "Hello," I called, because what else do you say to your own machine? "Anybody, hey." I waved an arm at the empty seat, at the desert, at God. "You left yourself." The other truck didn't move. The engine was idling, my idle. A little rough in the first 15 seconds from a bad sensor I've been too cheap to replace. Then smoothing into a purr you only hear when you live with a thing. The CB in my cab, dead seconds ago, crackled loud enough to make me flinch. I was 10 feet from my door. I could hear it through the open window. It was my voice, the wrong one, the hollow one. "You always say hello when you're afraid," it said, using my mouth like a glove. Like a kid opening a closet, I looked up into the office window, a fluorescent hum, a corkboard with nobody's notices pinned to it, a coffee machine tacked with a scotch-taped sign, "Out." No human shadow, no uniform, no state seal in a frame. Okay, I said, to the air, to the truck, to a feeling. Why me? Because you talk, the radio said. You fill the night with words. I like words. I like the shape your words make. I put my foot on my step and leaned in to grab the mic. It was cold. I almost laughed at that, the way something as dumb as temperature could still happen in a haunted night. I thumbed the transmit. If this is a prank, I said, it's a bad one. You followed me from the last stop. You mirrored my rig. You think I won't call a trooper? Call, my voice said smoothly. Tell him you met yourself and yourself was empty. Something moved in the other cab then, not a person. The pocket, the sleeve of air in the sleeper area rippled like heat over asphalt. The novelty horn under my grill burped once, a sheep's cough all on its own. Get out, I said. The radio laughed, my laugh. I hate my laugh when it's not tied to a face. Tell me something true, the radio said. Tell me why you don't use your kids' names on the air. Tell me why you stopped blipping the lights. That's none of your. Tell me about the night you hit the deer that wasn't lined up like a deer at all. It said, voice soft as breathed glass. Tell me about how the burrito rule didn't save anybody then. I don't talk about that night. I misread a shape in the road outside of Bozeman, snow coming down clean and thick and a flash of brown in the glare. I swerved like a greenhorn and the trailer yawed and I got it back. No thanks to physics. The state wrote it up as nothing because a Montana winter will throw bigger monsters than that. But when I rolled into the truck stop, a man was standing by the doors in his pajama pants and he said, "You okay? You looked like you were dancing with somebody. You looked like you didn't want to lead." I had to hold the sink and breathe in that bathroom for 5 minutes before my hands would work again. Enough, I said. I keyed the mic hard enough to grind plastic. Enough, you want confession, buy me coffee. Pennies, it said, and somehow that was worse than any threat. I did the stupid thing then. I walked across the gap between the trucks. The desert dark was a wall at the edge of the lot. The sodium bulbs hummed. The other rig's heat soaked the air, manifold warmth, a live metal size. I put my hand on the handle of the twins' door. It was the same nicked chrome handle I touch 15 times a day. Same micro scratch that looks like a fish hook under certain angles of light. I pulled. The door swung open. The cab smelled like me, coffee, detergent, a little citrus from the wipes I use on the wheel when I remember to be tidy. The floor mat had the same rub worn through at the heel. The dash had my digital clock set 5 minutes fast. The Polaroid in the vent. My kids on a Ferris wheel last summer, mouth wide, hair blown, was there. Only the edges of the photo were browned like a toast. There was still no driver. I took the smallest step inside. Every part of me wanted to go deeper, just enough to confirm the sleeper was as empty as it looked. I placed my palm against the back of the driver's seat and felt the warmth a body leaves when it gets up to pee. You know that heat if you live with someone. You slide into their seat and it's like laying your hand on their back. That warmth was there, and it wasn't fading. My own CB back in my own cab spoke through the open air like 2 rooms of a house yelling to each other. You don't get to keep both, it said softly. You don't get to be the man who talks and the man who listens. Pick. I backed out. My boot heel found the step edge and wobbled, and I caught myself on the grab bar. I closed the door. The desert shrugged. I climbed back into my truck and shut everything that would shut. I put her in gear and rolled. I didn't look at the other rig's mirrors. I didn't want to see myself seeing myself. At the end of the lot, there's a shallow dip where the asphalt meets the ramp. When I hit it, my trailer hiccuped. In my right mirror, a habit I wish I didn't keep, I saw the twin roll to, a heartbeat behind. We hit the on-ramp side by side, separated by a painted island. The desert breathed. We merged. For a couple miles, we ran in parallel, two long white bodies sliding through old lava and scrub. If a satellite took a picture right then, a man squinting at it in a government office would have assumed he was seeing a sensor glitch. The twins' marker lights blipped twice. Mine didn't. I kept my hands still because I was afraid of what they'd decide on their own. Then the twin drifted, no signal, no courtesy, across the line, across the rumble strip and into the dark. Not off the road, not into the ditch, into the dark like there was road there after all, a road only it could feel. The lamps diminished, the desert swallowed. The moths under the way station light were the only creatures that seemed sure of anything in the world. I drove until fallen. I spoke to no one. The CB stayed off. When I finally parked, I felt like I'd been holding a weight at arm's length for hours and had put it down and couldn't lift my hands. The next morning at 10, when the diner was loud with men pouring ranch dressing on things that didn't require it, I asked the counter in general if there was a portable way station out on the 95 east of where I'd come in. The waitress tilted her chin at a regular 2 stools down. He managed a lot down at the yard, knew who parked where. Not last night, he said. That one's been dark all week. Generator shot. You must have seen the lights from the borrow pit. They've got those mobile towers down there. Looks like a station if you squint. I nodded because nodding is what you do when the alternative is more work than your brain can afford. I sold the truck 6 weeks later. It wasn't a dramatic decision. There was no ceremony. My boss took the news like a man who has learned to roll with freight claims and stubborn alternators. I told him I wanted local work. He said figures, then asked if I'd be willing to train the kid from Elko who didn't know the difference between a cheater bar and a crowbar yet. I said sure. I said a lot of sure. I still hear the radio sometimes when my phone kicks on with a weather alert or a store scanner chirps a price. A fizz on the edge of things. A shape of a sentence that fits my mouth before I've thought to make it. I keep the dash of the work pickup clean. No photos, no trinkets, no crumbs for the ghost to learn my taste. And when I drive past the turn for the desert run, if the night is black and the air is full of that church silence, I keep my hands at 10 and 2 and do not talk. Because that was the lesson, I guess. Not that there's a double of me haunting the shoulders. Not that the desert yawns wide enough to swallow a whole second self. The lesson was smaller and worse. Words are footprints, and out there on the ink-black mile where sound can run for days, something is always tracking. Story 3. The rest area that wasn't Ohio Turnpike. If you drive long enough, every highway gets its own personality. Some roads are fussy, always an accident, always a lane closure like they wake up mad at you for existing. Some are easy, wide-shouldered, and polite, the cruising kind that makes you forget you're piloting 80,000 pounds of impatience. The Ohio Turnpike, to me, was the reliable ant. Tidy, predictable, plenty of places to pull off and put yourself back together. Which is why the night it didn't behave still bothers me. It was a Tuesday that had stretched into Wednesday, late fall. A cold that felt clean until the wind found your wrists. I was hauling a mixed pallet, paper goods, boxed pasta, a crate of industrial light fixtures bound for a contractor outside Toledo. The day had run long for all the usual reasons. A forklift battery dying at the dock right when the guy finally got to my trailer. Some bright spark ahead of me towing a broken sedan with a rope like we were all pioneers. And then a surprise inspection outside Youngstown that cost me 48 minutes and a lecture about reflective tape. By the time I was westbound beyond Cleveland, the clock and the fuel gauge were both making faces. I had enough diesel to reach the next service plaza if the wind would stop leaning on me. I set the cruise gentle and let the miles lay down under the hood. You learn not to guess at your own luck out here. You carry it like an egg in your pocket and try not to jostle. The road was quiet. No holiday traffic. No football crowd heading anywhere. Overhead, sodium lights every mile or so painted the lane markers a tired lemon. My cab heater had finally found its personality. The vent smelled faintly of pine from a cheap air freshener I'd promised myself I'd throw out 3 states ago. The CB was on but mostly murmuring, a low sizzle like a skillet cooling. When the sign for a service plaza came up, white letters on green, the Turnpike's tidy font, I let myself breathe. It wasn't one I recognized, which happens sometimes. Ohio has a few older plazas tucked between the renovated ones, the kind with a low-slung brick building and a dozen pay phone stands that haven't heard a coin drop since Clinton. The sign said Laurel Grove Service Plaza, gas food open 24 HRS. The arrow curled off to the right. I took the ramp. For a place I'd never noticed, Laurel Grove was lit like a movie set. Tall poles with round globes cast soft pools of light across a lot that was cleaner than it had any right to be. Lined up at the far edge were cars the color of candy. Cherry red, robin's egg blue, butter yellow, shapes with tail fins and chrome smiles that the Midwest keeps like heirlooms. On the truck side, long low pumps sat under a canopy with standard in block letters, the kind of logo you only see now in museums and on ironic t-shirts. I swung wide to the diesel island and killed my lights. The station's bulbs hummed that insect hymn you only hear when you're bone tired. I topped off first. It's a superstition of mine, food after fuel, as if the truck will resent me if I feed myself before I feed her, and then I parked in the row closest to the building. The walkway to the plaza doors was spotless. No half-melted snowbanks with grime stripes. No spilled coffee fossilized into sticky art. Inside, the floor was little checkerboard tiles that had known wax in the last century. The air smelled like fresh coffee and hot metal, like a kitchen that cooks more than it wipes. The first red flag was the coffee price. Hand-lettered chalkboard above the counter, coffee 50 cents. Not 50 cents with a 9 after it to make it hurt less. Just 50 cents. Next to that, fried bologna sandwich $1, 25 and pie 75 cents. A glass cake stand held a mile-high meringue that could have doubled as a cloud. The second red flag wore a bouffant and white Keds. The woman behind the counter had eyeliner like a comic book. She smiled the kind of smile you don't see much on night shift. A real one, not the weary baring of teeth that says we've both made choices. "Evening, honey," she said. "Pour yourself and settle up after. We got apple and pecan. Apple's better." Her name tag was a little metal rectangle, Dottie. Next to it was a pin that said Laurel Grove, proud to serve, with a tiny flag in red enamel. "I thought the apple was always better," I said, because my mouth wanted to pretend we were in a conversation and not in a place where everything looked like a postcard. "Depends who's doing the baking," she said, and winked as if we were old co-conspirators. I poured coffee into a tan ceramic mug, the heavy kind your grandmother used to stun a fly, and took stock of the room. It was busy for 1:00 a.m. A handful of men in work shirts with patches, Cleveland Electric, Tire King, Consolidated Tool, sat at the counter, shoulders hunched like they'd been leaning the same direction for years. A young couple with high hair and nervous hands shared a plate of fries in a booth, knees touching under the table. A state trooper uniform draped on a chair by the door, cap upside down on the seat, as if the man had evaporated and neglected to take his hat with him. The music was the third red flag, a jukebox in the corner, chrome arch winking, bubbling light tubes working, playing a song I knew without knowing how, drums like polite thunder, a girl group promising to wait by the phone. I could hear a faint crackle under the melody, the soft, audible dust of a record that had seen love. I took a stool at the end of the counter. Dottie set a plate in front of me without asking, a fried bologna sandwich crowned with a half-sour pickle that still wore its brine. "On the house, if you can tell me who sings this one," she said, nodding toward the jukebox. "The Shires," I guessed, because when in doubt, trust early girl groups and the stubbornness of American memory. "Close enough," she said, like teachers do when they want to give you the dignity of not being wrong. "You headed to Toledo. Contractor outside of it yet?" I took a bite. The bread was griddled, the bologna perfect, a simple thing done by people who didn't believe in shortcuts. "You run this road often?" she asked. "Often enough," I said. "Don't think I've seen this plaza before." "Folks don't always see what's good for them," she said lightly, which could have been a joke or a sermon. "You take your coffee with cream, Ray," she added, and only after she'd turned to the fridge did my brain catch up with the fact that I hadn't told her my name. I looked down at my jacket at the patch that said Coleman above the pocket. Maybe the Ray was a coin toss. Maybe every trucker looks like a Ray at 1 in the morning. "Black's fine," I said. She poured anyway, a small tide of cream turning the coffee the color of an old baseball glove. A man slid onto the stool 2 down from me, smelled of oil and cold, the clean, honest stink of a day done. He wore a cap with auto light in block letters. "How's the road?" he asked in a tone that really meant make me feel we're in the same world. "Empty," I said. "Clean lanes, a little wind." "Always a little wind," he said. He tapped his finger to the beat, hummed harmony on the chorus without thinking about it. I finished the sandwich and Spring let go of a notch inside me. The coffee was hot without being punishing, and for the first time that week I didn't resent the sight of my own hands. I paid with a 5. Dottie made a show of counting out the change like a civics lesson. When I pushed 3/4 back toward the tip jar, she put her hand over mine briefly, warm and dry. "You be careful pulling back," she said. "Watch for deer by the bridge." "I haven't seen a bridge," I said. "You will," she said. "You'll feel it more than see it. That's the trouble with some bridges." I could have stayed there all night, and I have in places like that, because sometimes you choose a warm room over a cold clock, but the Turnpike rules your spine when you're running west. I thanked her because some people deserve the words said out loud, and stepped back into the brightness of the lot. The air had sharpened a degree, the kind of temperature drop you feel in the teeth. My truck sat right where I'd left it, big and silly, like a dog that knows you're coming back to scratch it behind the ears. I started her up and checked the mirrors and eased toward the exit. There's a choreography to rejoining the Turnpike. You creep to the merge, you glance at the ramp signage even though you already know which way is west. You check for some joker barreling where he shouldn't, you go. I did all that. The on-ramp curved like a polite hand. Halfway down, something skipped a beat. Not the engine, my head. I looked left for the bridge Dottie had warned me about and saw a stand of trees where there should have been nothing but mown shoulder. The ramp felt longer than it had been coming in, like sheet music stretched to make a song last until the hero reaches the train. Then I was back on the main line, white lane paint strobing under the nose, everything ordinary. 2 miles down, a green sign told me next service Plaza 42 miles. I blinked at that. The distances between Ohio plazas lie somewhere behind your eyes when you ride this road enough. 42 felt wrong. Laurel Grove was a legacy stop I'd somehow missed, maybe, tucked outdated between renovated siblings. Maybe they'd shaved a few miles off. Maybe I was bad at remembering numbers at 1 in the morning with a belly half happy. The CB came back from its nap with a burst of chatter, a driver warning about a ladder in the Hammer Lane near exit 91. Someone else looking for a place that still served real chili past midnight. Then, faint under it, a bar of the same song from the jukebox. A girl voice behind static, the hook catching like burrs on wool. I clicked the squelch tighter. The music went away, then nudged back in when another driver let off his mic. Coincidence, I told myself. Skip. Some late-night oldie station creeping across the band. Not everything that fits is fate. The bridge, when it came, wasn't shaped like a bridge. It was a dip. The kind you miss unless you learned how to feel the weight shift in a trailer like a pulse. The wheel went just a hair lighter. The straps ticked once as the load settled and remembered gravity. I looked left, expecting water. There was a black smear like a creek should be, and a run of trees huddled as if for gossip. I thought of deer standing hip-deep in the dark, watching the road throw its river of light. I rolled on, the highway stretching like ribbon candy. By morning I was parked where the contractor wanted me, signing a paper saying I had delivered what I had promised, and that if the pallet contained a grenade, it was no longer my problem. After that, I had a window before the afternoon run, enough time for coffee not brewed in defense of itself, and a bad donut with a name that sounded like a dare. At the cafe, a trooper was paying his check, the kind of man who wears the hat so the hat doesn't wear him. I asked him because sometimes you want an authority to grant you permission to believe your own memory. Hey, where's Laurel Grove on this stretch? I don't think I've seen it before last night. He adjusted a corner of his belt he didn't need to. Laurel Grove, he repeated, tasting the name like it was a forgotten song. You mean the old one? I guess. That plaza burned in '74, he said. Kitchen fire hopped the grease trap. Whole center went up. Bad night. They demolished what was left a year later. Nothing there now but a maintenance pull-off and a fence. You sure you don't mean Great Lakes? Folks mix them up. I laughed because that's what you do when the floor moves under you a little and you're in public. Must be. This one had coffee for 50 cents. Then you definitely mean the old one, he said. He said it lightly, but he didn't smile. On my break, curiosity did the thing it does when it wants to hurt you gently. I pulled up the Ohio Turnpike's official plaza map on my phone. The neat icons marched along the line. Great Lakes, Commodore Perry, Middle Ridge, all the old names holding hands with the new. Between two, I knew well, was a tiny gray gap where Laurel Grove should have been if it still existed. A maintenance access point with no services. If you've ever had your stomach drop and then keep dropping, like a bad elevator that forgot the ground floor, you know the feeling that came. I told myself I could simply retrace, like a cop show following breadcrumbs to a body. That afternoon, before my next pickup, I drove back east on my own time the few exits to where the ramp had been in my head for 12 hours. No sign, no Laurel Grove, no arrow. A guardrail ran unbroken past a strip of scrub where the map swore there was nothing to see. I slowed enough to annoy a man in a white pickup who passed me at a speed that suggested he believed in a different God than I do. A mile marker that had watched me make 2 different choices in 2 different nights stared without interest. I took the next exit, looped back west, slowed again at the same mile. The woods there looked like woods everywhere. Ordinary, which is another way of saying unhelpful. That evening, out of a blend of superstition and a need to be told a story by someone who didn't mind if it had soft edges, I asked an old-timer fueling next to me if he'd ever heard of Laurel Grove. "Sure," he said, not looking up from the nozzle. "My old man took me there when I was little. Best lemon meringue you ever put in your face. Place went up like a matchbox. Lot of folks made it out, some didn't." "You ever stop there after?" I asked, feeling stupid as soon as I heard the word. He squinted into the middle distance, which is where we keep memories landfill. "Stopped at a place once that looked like it could have been it. Clean, too clean. Coffee that didn't taste like it came off a truck. A waitress who called me Han like it was my name." "What you do?" "Got back on the road," he said. "What else is there to do?" He clicked the cap back on his tank like a period. I rerouted after that. Officially because of construction, the Turnpike's app warned me about. Unofficially because some nights you don't want to drive past a place that might ask you to come in and sit a while and never leave. I took I-80 the long way, added 27 minutes to runs that were already almost respectable. When dispatch asked why, I told them something true that wasn't the truth. Smoother pavement. On the nights I couldn't avoid it. Contracts don't care about ghosts and groceries have to be on shelves. I kept to the center lane and let the mile markers do their integer dance. I didn't look toward the trees by where the ramp would have been. Didn't touch the CB when a shape of a song snuck under the chatter. Because that happens now more than once. On a static-heavy night, when 2 drivers both release their mics at the same time and leave the band open for a heartbeat, I'll hear a jukebox whisper through, the exact kind of harmony you only get when girls in the 60s sang too close to a microphone, and love was something you could wait for by a phone on a kitchen wall. Sometimes the song is clear enough I can make out the lyric. Sometimes it's just the rhythm of a memory. Once, just once, I thought I heard a voice that could have been Dottie's say, "Watch the bridge." I checked my speed, hands at 10 and 2, eyes long. The road felt like a promise kept. I've tried to be sensible about it. I've tried to file it under the categories truckers used to keep the world manageable. Skip on the CB, brain playing back a song, an old man story wearing new shoes. Those all fit a little. So does something else that doesn't have a checkbox on any company form. Some places are more than their coordinates. I don't know what burned in 1974 beyond what the paper said. Grease, oxygen, bad luck. I don't know what happens to the habits people leave behind. Pouring coffee, counting change, telling a stranger to mind the deer and the bridge. I only know that on a night when I needed a place to be told I still existed beyond my logbook, I found a room that looked like America wanted to look once, with counters clean and songs simple, and a woman who knew my name without needing to ask. And maybe that's why I don't go back. Not because I'm afraid of what I'll find, but because I'm afraid of what I won't. Some kindnesses you keep like tokens in your pocket. You don't spend them twice. If you pass that stretch of the Turnpike on a clear night and your radio hisses in a way that makes the hair lift on your arm, turn the squelch a little tighter if you must. Or don't. Maybe let a little music through. If you hear a harmony that sounds like three girls in a dress you can't quite picture, if you catch a word that rhymes with waiting, if you smell coffee the way it should smell, take your hands off the mic and let it play. And if a woman with a metal name tag ever pours you cream you didn't ask for and tells you to watch the bridge, take the advice. Some bridges you feel more than see. That's the trouble with them. That's also the blessing. Story 4. The Truck Stop Preacher, Louisiana Bayou. There are places where the night sticks to you. The Louisiana Bayou is one of them. It's not just the heat or the gnats or the way the air smells like wet pennies and old leaves. It's the feeling that the dark has opinions. You can drive 1,000 miles through desert or prairie and never think twice about the distance between you and the sky. Down here, the sky presses back. I was easing a flatbed south along US 165, empty after a crane delivery in Monroe, aiming to pick up pipe outside Huma the next morning. Late August, storm season making the horizon mutter. I'd run longer than I should have, and decided to shave an hour off my fatigue by grabbing coffee at a little truck stop I like near a place called Bayou Noir. The kind of stop that sells bait, donuts, and phone chargers in the same glass case. 2 diesel islands, faded awning, bugs batting themselves silly against the fluorescence. I parked at the far edge, near the ditch where water hid under a skin of green. The heat had the texture of a towel from a dryer that never cooled. When I stepped down, my shirt glued itself to my back. I could hear frogs doing what frogs do when they're proud to be frogs, and something big moving just out of sight in the reeds. That's when I saw him. He was leaning near the door, in the spill of the vending machine's light, wearing a black shirt and a white clerical collar. Not young, not old. The kind of face that lets people confess weather to it. He held a paper tray with 2 steaming styrofoam cups and smiled like we already knew each other. "Evening, driver," he said, voice smooth as a radio at midnight. "House coffee, on the Lord." I don't usually drink what strangers hand me in parking lots. Seems like a high percentage way to become a story. But there was something about him, calm without being pushy. The collar helped. Down here you grow up seeing black shirts at funerals and weddings, men who can step into a room and lower the temperature just by being the one not to panic. "That's so," I said, half a grin. "What's the Lord doing brewing truck stop coffee?" "Working in mysterious ways," he said, and the smile reached his eyes. He offered me the nearer cup. "Blessing for safe travel if you want it." I took the coffee. Habit made me sniff it first. It smelled like coffee should, burnt a little with a hint of chicory the way locals do. I took a careful sip. Hot, bitter, honest. "Can't hurt," I said. "I'm Ray." He nodded like that was a prayer. "Call me Father Joseph." He didn't ask where I was headed. He gestured toward the hood of my truck. "You mind if we pray here? Knock yourself out." He set his own cup on the bumper and laid his palm on the warm hood like men test the heat of a horse's flank. He began in that soft cadence people fall into down here when words are working, half whisper, half song. Something about the Lord keeping watch on the highways and over waters and under bridges. He said my full name, which I hadn't given him. We get used to that on the road. Your name's on paperwork, on patches, on a DOT number anyone can look up with a phone. But the way he said it didn't feel like reading. It felt like finding. He traced a little cross in the dust on my hood with his thumb. Then he did another motion, quicker than the first, like drawing a fish or a figure eight sideways, and rested his hand flat. "May your lights cut clean," he finished. "May the creatures see you and scatter. May no water rise to claim your way." "Amen," I said, because my grandmother's hand still lives somewhere in the back of my head. He clapped my shoulder once, light and friendly, and picked up his coffee. "Watch the low roads," he said. "They forget where they end." Then he walked toward the corner of the building and was gone around it, footsteps quiet as if the concrete had decided not to echo. I went inside for a boudin ball and a candy bar I didn't need. The cashier had a TV on behind the lottery tickets, weather radar doing that hurricane shoulder swirl out in the Gulf. "Y'all got a priest hanging around?" I asked as she rang me up. She looked at me hard enough to count. "Not unless you brought him," she said. "Closest church is 5 miles and Father Andre drives a Buick the color of dishwater." I took my snacks and let the bell jingle behind me. The preacher wasn't by the door. The lot looked the same, moths going berserk, a couple of local pickups with fishing rod racks, one old Peterbilt with a dog sleeping on the step. I figured Father Joseph had gone on to bless someone else's night, or the mosquitoes had blessed him right out of the parking lot. I climbed back in, took another swallow of coffee, and rolled. The first thing that went wrong was the headlights. A mile past the stop, the road pinched between trees and water, and the sky decided to test its lungs. Rain came with no ramp-up. 1 second the windshield was a window, the next it was frosted glass. I clicked the wipers to frantic and leaned forward the way people do when they're trying to see through decisions. Then both low beams flicked out. Not a pop, not a slow fade, just gone. The dash lights stayed blue. The marker lights glowed wholesome, but the road ahead vanished. I snapped the highs. They answered for a second, white cones biting into the rain, then died too, like somebody had cut a wire I didn't own. "Okay," I said to the night, which has never once listened when I talked to it. I eased off the throttle and found the edge by feel and faith. A possum, or something long and wet and low, skittered out from the ditch and froze, then bolted. Not across my lane, but back into the reeds like it had remembered an appointment. A second later, 3 frogs did the same, a little parade away from the black ribbon. The drainage on the shoulder shimmered with light I wasn't making. I clicked the lows off and on like a man stuck in a habit. Nothing. My hands had gone slick on the wheel. The CB fizzed to life. "Eastbound, you dark as a pocket," a voice said. "You okay up there?" "Lost my eyes," I said, trying to pull it over gentle. "Shoulders skinny in 200 yards," another voice cut in. "There's a pullout by a cypress with a lightning scar. You'll see it." "Well, you won't." "Copy," I said. My heart was beating in my ears like it was trying to rappel out. That's when the symbols showed up. At first I thought it was the classic fog, your breath against the cold glass making little ghosts. Then I realized the condensation on the inside of my windshield was patterning, not random. Lines, curves. A circle with a cross laid over it, only crooked. A triangle nested in another. A shape like 2 hooks facing each other, joined at the teeth. They bloomed pale and precise, as if a finger were drawing from the opposite side. The lines beaded with moisture and held glistening threads in a web I hadn't asked for. I turned the defrost to full howl. The symbols brightened, then held steady, stubborn as names carved in a desk. A drop gathered at the base of the crooked cross and slid down like a bead of mercury, splitting into 2 perfect pearls at the edge of my sight. Behind the glass, the road gave me a gift, an opening, a gravel pullout like the voice had promised, a sawed-off place where maintenance crews must park when they forget the rest of us. I nudged the wheel and let my front tires bump into the crunch. I killed the engine, caught my breath catching up, and sat in the dark with the rain eating the world. The night had its sounds: water chewing at water, frogs with opinions, something chuckling in the ditch like a bad joke. Under that, a high, thin whine as if the power lines were praying to themselves. I pulled my phone, 1 bar. It did the useless dance between 4G and a lie. The map showed the road as a thin gray thread draped over blue. Floodplain. The bayou friendly as a postcard until it decided otherwise. I tried the flashlight. It threw a cone that made the inside of the cab look like a stage set for a play no man wanted to see. The symbols were still there. Up close, I could see places where my own hand had maybe brushed the glass over the last year. Clean arcs where a cloth had wiped and missed. The new lines had etched themselves through the film. Where they met, they formed a little knot, a geometry that made my eyes skip, like the way some patterns make snakes relax and birds panic. I thought of Father Joseph's thumb in the dust on my hood, the little motion after the cross, fish or figure eight. My coffee sitting warm in the holder, steam from it climbing to meet the glass. The blessing: may your lights cut clean, may the creatures see you and scatter, may no water rise to claim your way. A blessing can be a spell if you tilt your head and listen sideways. I cracked the driver window an inch, wet heat shouldered in. I stuck 2 fingers out and made the sign my grandmother taught me without asking anybody's permission. Whatever this is, I said, you don't get to ride with me. My breath fogged the glass where the symbols weren't. I wiped a corner clean with my sleeve and it smeared like honey. The lines brightened, then dulled, then brightened again like something took a breath on the other side. The CB hissed, "You in the pullout?" The same voice asked. 10-4, I said. Lights gone, weird condensation. "Welcome to the swamp," he said, not unkind. "You want me to call it in?" I heard another voice in the background, a woman this time, tight like she'd cinched her belt a notch too far. "Tell him stay put, troopers 5 out." I killed the CB and sat with the rain while 5 minutes unspooled into 15. By then my hands had stopped shaking and moved on to a hum. The lights tried themselves once. Both lows flickered on like a pair of eyes in a long hallway and then dimmed faster than courage. The animals kept their distance. Nothing crossed. Nothing blinked in the reeds. The symbols dulled. A mosquito found my wrist and decided to write its own scripture. Blue strobes pulsed down the lane, soft against the trees. A state trooper rolled in behind me, wash of light painting the cypress knees like tombstones. He parked at an angle like men do who expect to have to leave in a hurry. A tall man climbed out. Hat brim held the rain at bay. "You the one with the dark nose?" he called, walking up the gravel. "That's me," I said through the crack in the window. I hit the switch and the glass sighed down enough for his face to be a person and not a badge. "You cut your beams?" he asked, peering at the dash. "They cut themselves," I said. "Everything else is alive, it's just the eyes." He made a thoughtful sound that wasn't a word. His flashlight found the windshield and paused. The beam traced one of the symbols and held. "You draw that?" he asked, complicated. "I can barely sign a receipt at this hour," I said. I got a blessing back at the stop, preacher in a collar. He touched the hood, drew something. Then this started, adjusted his brim. "What stop?" "Bayou Noir, little one with the bait freezer." He nodded once, almost like he'd been waiting to hear that. "All right, cut her off. We're gonna tow you out of here to the parish lot. I got a man can look at that wiring without making it worse." He hesitated. "You drink anything he gave you?" "Coffee," I said. "Tasted like coffee." "Don't drink any more," he said, mild as weather. "Pour it on the ground before we go." I think, he said carefully. "We got 2 rigs marked up like this last week. Both had drawings on the glass. Both lost their lights near water. One of them was found sunk up to the door handles in a marsh road nobody had any business being on. The other one we haven't found. Talk on the band said both drivers got prayed over by a man in a collar who isn't any of the 5 priests within 20 miles. He gave me half a smile that didn't have any humor in it. You ready to believe something you don't like?" "I've been practicing," I said. He watched the rain for a beat, then leaned in and spoke like he was telling me where he kept his spare key. "There are folks down here who mix and match. Little church, little swamp, little old country. Some of them mean well even when they don't. Some of them mean otherwise. A mark's a mark whether you call it a blessing or a claim." He stepped back and gestured to the coffee. I opened the lid and poured it out into the gravel. It steamed and vanished and left a dark stain that spread like an oil slick and then was just wet. We hooked a strap to my front toe point and he dragged me like a reluctant dog up out of the low place. 2 miles on, as we rose where the road remembered how to be rode, the lights blinked back. First the markers brightened, then one low beam, then the other. No drama, just a man coming back to his chair like he'd forgotten his hat. At the parish lot, a mechanic with calm hands checked every obvious thing and 3 unobvious ones. He shook his head at the end. "Ain't nothing wrong with this truck tonight," he said. "Whatever it was, it isn't." The trooper wrote a report that said what reports say. He gave me a card with a number and said if I saw the preacher again, I should call before shaking hands. I asked him if they'd found the other rig, the second marked one. "Not yet," he said. "We'll keep looking when the water gives it back." I slept in the lot because the thought of the bayou road between me and a motel made my brain choose trucks and fences and the company of men who know how to tighten things. In the morning, the windshield was clean. No symbols. Just the faint arcs of old wiper blades and the fingerprints of a man who'd leaned where he shouldn't. I rerouted like a coward and felt smart for doing it. I took the higher, longer way, added time I didn't have, and delivered pipe to men who didn't care that the world tries to claim what it can. I don't stop at Bayou Noir anymore. I go on to the big plaza with the chain coffee and the manager who has opinions about which muffins mean your marriage is over. When I see a collar at a truck stop now, I raise a hand and keep moving. Call it ingratitude. Call it survival. Some nights, when the fog lifts slow off the ditches and the frogs are talking in one voice, my headlights will hiccup for a heartbeat and then remember themselves. I'll breathe out and watch the ghost of it touch the glass. If condensation blooms, I turn on the defrost and let science have the first swing. If a line appears that wasn't there before, I don't trace it. I don't name it. I tell the night we have a delivery window. And I listen to the radio when the parish sheriff comes on to say they found a cab in the reeds without a trailer, or they didn't. 2 rigs vanished that week after mine. One showed up wrong, like it had been put down by a hand that didn't know where the floor was. The other still hasn't called home. Blessings keep. So do claims. Out here, you learn the difference the hard way. If a stranger offers you coffee in a place where the water rises quick and the dark has opinions, take the cup if you must. But watch what he draws on your hood. And if the animals start scattering before you get there, turn around. The Lord can bless you from the other side of a county line just fine. Story 5. Ice Road Freight, Montana Winter. By December, you either make peace with Montana or you don't drive it. The wind has opinions, the snow has a schedule you weren't invited to, and the passes, God bless 'em, are like old ranchers who will shake your hand or break it depending on the look on your face. I'd been hauling the northern route long enough to read the sky like a logbook. That night it read trouble. Dispatch had called with a sealed load out of a cold storage outside Billings. Frozen beef. Paperwork tidy as a church bulletin. Destination Kalispell by morning. I didn't like the timing or the weather bulletin scrolling red at the bottom of every TV in the diner. But it was good money and I figured I'd go slow. Chain up if I had to. Make Maria's pass in the lull between bands. The reefer was a Therma King that had treated me decent. Set point -10 degrees F. Unit green lit diesel tank topped off with anti-gel. I did my walk around twice. Lugs, airlines, glad hand seals, brakes dry, door seals tight, trailer lock cable cinched and tagged. When I rolled north out of Great Falls, the world had already pulled the shades. Those wide wheatlands were nothing but suggestion. The only things certain were my headlights and the brush of snow crossing the highway like ghost cattle. I had the CB on 19, half hope, half habit. Listening to men I'd never met talk about blowing drifts and the way a plow throws a wall you could sleep in. Someone said a cow elk had taken up residence inside a snow fence east of Browning and was charging anything taller than a mailbox. I smiled because I wanted to and wished her well. By the time I hit US 2 near East Glacier, it wasn't snowing so much as erasing. The wind was a pro with a big eraser, and the road kept disappearing under it like chalk you didn't write deep enough. I kicked off the cruise, got my hand set at 10 and 2 like a student, and let the truck tell me what it wanted. No heroics, no sudden moves. The reefer hummed a steady note behind me. The white noise purr that means the meat is cold, the money is safe, and you get to worry about other things. The first wrong thing was small enough I almost missed it, just a scratch. Not like a mouse, not like a strap whipping, more like someone dragging a rake's tooth along the inside of the trailer doors. I felt it more than heard it, a faint shiver through the frame, a question running under my feet. I checked my mirrors. Snow in the lamps, both doors latched, seals flush, nothing bouncing, no loose chains, no flapping tarp I'd forgotten for the very simple reason I wasn't tarped. I told myself it was the wind playing luthier with the sheet metal. The sound came again, longer, a slow shake that made my molars notice each other. Then something else under it, a sound so low it barely qualified as sound, like a grown man humming into a barrel or a diesel idling 5 houses away. Not bovine. Cattle make a lot of noises, complaints and questions and church-grade flatulence, but they don't purr. You hearing that? I asked the CB without meaning to transmit. Habit bit me. I let the mic hang. Nobody bit back. The band was quiet in the way that means the weather has people counting more than talking. There's a little pull-out before the climb, a wide spot that exists because somebody with a plow needed a place to turn around 40 winters ago. I eased into it, tires crunching through the crust. Snow feathered in from every direction, the wind coming down the slope like an animal that had learned its strength. I left the truck in gear, set the brake, and sat a second listening. Check a long drag, then a series of shorter, impatient scratches. Not frantic, deliberate. The right answer on a sealed load is you don't mess with it. You don't break tags, you don't rubberneck, you don't tap the door and ask the beef how it's feeling. The wrong answer is you pretend you heard nothing and then end up explaining to a state trooper why your frozen beef, turned the trailer into an art project. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped down into a wind that had decided I was furniture. Snow stung my cheeks like angry confetti. My boots squeaked once and then committed to being ice blocks. I walked back along the trailer, lamp carving a tunnel out of the white. The reefer unit rattled on the nose, steady, no alarms. The data logger light blinked healthy. I raked the beam over the sidewalls, no bulges, no obvious damage. At the back, the doors were frosted like bathroom glass. The hasp was locked, the company tag intact, thin strip of plastic with a serial number that would end my week if I broke it without cause. I stood with my palm flat on the left door and felt the sound more than heard it. Check, and the faintest push from inside. Not much, just enough that if I'd been half asleep I could convince myself it was my own breath moving. Then the low again, down where a throat would rumble if a throat had been carved out of a bad dream. My flashlight beam jittered because my hand decided it had opinions. Hey, I said, because that's what men say to the night when their brains want a rehearsal. Knock it off. The trailer knocked back. 2 quick thunks knuckled a door like agreement or mockery. Then silence, then a drag that went up the door instead of side to side, higher than a steer could manage without a ladder and a plan. That's when the reefer coughed. The smooth hum hitched, the way your voice does when a word surprises it. The unit sputtered, surged, and then the fan stopped. In the sudden, clean quiet, the wind took over, and from inside the trailer came a sound I still can't file properly in my head. Claws, too many, raking metal from top to bottom while something breathed a fog so cold it pushed out around the door seals in little puffs. For a second, one bright, stupid second, the gasket at the hinge line bulged outward, and through the seam I saw movement. Not beef, not hide, something pale under frost, jointed wrong. Digits long and thin with black tips that weren't hooves or anything your grandfather taught you about. It pressed hard enough that the seal creaked, and 5 distinct points traced arc scratches in the frost like a child practicing cursive. Then the unit kicked back on, fan whined, the casing shivered, and whatever was on the other side withdrew, leaving only the frosting and the scratches and me. The reefer panel chimed. I squinted through the snow. Alarm 63. LOW ref or CAP scrolled by, then alarm cleared. Capacity dip, short cycle. Happens when wind gusts weird across the intake, when a unit catches its breath the wrong way at the wrong time. Happens in minus 20 degrees F wind chill when air is full of ice, dust, and spite. Happens. I walked backward to the cab because it seemed polite not to turn my back on the shape of my own bad decisions. I climbed up, shut the door on the weather, and sat there with my hands on the wheel and my heart reminding me it mostly knows what it's doing. The CB cracked loud and close. You parked in that wideout before the climb eastbound. A voice asked. You can hear men squint on the radio. You good? Lost a cycle on the box, I said. Got some noise. Yeah, he said after a beat. It's the wind tonight. Sounds like fingernails. Sounds like a woman on the roof sometimes. Don't listen. She'll ask you to stop for her too. I didn't want that picture. Chain if you're climbing, he added like a benediction. It's glass up there. I chained. Of course I chained. If there's a place in this world you want to hear metal bite and hold, it's a pass in a blizzard when everything else is a suggestion. I took it slow. I spoke to the truck out loud the way you speak to a horse. Good girl, that's right, easy. The wind shouldered me twice, hard enough to earn names I don't use in front of my kids. The reefer ran steady, temperature holding, the logger blinking its idiot blink. No more scratches, no more purrs. Just the big-shouldered quiet of snow and steel doing a job no one else wants. On the west side, the sky remembered stars exist. The snow let go of its breath, and the road came back in slate-gray strips between drifts. By the time I hit Essex, I could smell trees under the cold, fir and something that made me think of Sundays. I took the pull at Pinnacle because I needed to, because the blood in my forearms wanted an explanation and the truck wanted to stop being a boat. I walked back one more time, telling myself I'd see nothing and that would be the story. The door frost had re-glazed. The scratches were there. 5 clean arcs down the left door, a pattern somebody with a chalkboard could have diagrammed. The height of them was wrong for any steer. Too high, too narrow together. I laid my palm against the metal and felt the cold like a decision. The tag was intact. That stupid little strip of plastic might as well have been a Bible verse and a lawsuit taped together. I didn't cut it. I logged the alarm code. I called the number on the manifest to document, because if there's one way to make a weird thing ordinary, it's paperwork. A man with a voice like a tie clucked and thanked me for maintaining set point under adverse conditions. I didn't mention claws. I didn't mention breathing. Kalispell was quiet when I rolled in late, the kind of quiet you feel behind your eyes. The receiving guy had a wool cap that had known worse winters than me. He checked the seal. He checked the number. He cut it, swung the doors, and did the little hop receivers do when the temperature hits them in the face. Cold fog poured out and lay on the dock like a pet. He glanced at the scratches and gave me a look like he'd found a twig in his soup. "We had a forklift kiss a door last week," he offered, conversational. "Maybe caught a burr." "Maybe," I said. They unloaded fast. Boxes stamped USDA and beef stacked on the dock, honest as a paycheck. No pale moving things. No joints that bent where God didn't think to put hinges. When they finished, he signed my bill and made a joke about football, and I laughed in the right spot. I walked back to the empty box and looked one more time at those 5 arcs. My breath made a new cloud, and for a second it looked like a hand on the other side had exhaled to meet it. Then it thinned, and it was just me and a truck and a February that didn't care. I finished that winter and one more because bills are bills and pride is a dumb horse that'll drag you places you don't mean to go. Then I stopped taking sealed loads when I could help it. I told dispatch I didn't like the margin on reefer fuel with prices up. That was true. The other truth was smaller and nastier. I didn't like not knowing what I'd haul as a secret while the paperwork lied politely to my face. Now I run flatbed mostly. Steel when the mills got it. Lumber when the fires didn't eat it. I strap my life where I can see it. I still hit the northern route some nights because Montana doesn't get out of your blood just because you ask it to. When the wind climbs the cab and fingers the joints, the trailer hums a little song only drivers hear. On nights like that, a scratch will speak through the metal. A natural thing, a normal thing, snow and ice negotiating with steel. I tell myself it's physics. I turn up the heater one notch and talk about nothing into the empty air. Some nights it answers, not with words, with that low, almost friendly purr you feel in your ribs more than you hear. I keep my eyes on the road. I let the wind do its math. And I don't stop on the wide out before the climb unless I have to. If you ever do, and the reefer coughs and the fan dies and the night lets you hear what's riding behind you, don't be brave for no reason. Don't touch the seal unless someone with a badge tells you to. Don't lie to yourself about hoof and claw. And if something breathes against the gasket and traces a pattern in frost that doesn't belong to any herd you've ever moved past a fence, Say hey if you must, but say it like you're passing a stranger on a sidewalk, like you both got places to be, like you both know better than to make friends. Story 6. The highway patrol that never was Texas Panhandle. Out on the Panhandle at night, the wind doesn't blow, it decides. It leans on you like a tired friend who forgets his own strength and the land lets him. There's a point past Amarillo where the sky feels wider than any map can hold, and the road ahead lays out like a dare. I'd run that stretch enough to know where the troopers like to nap, where the county line sneaks up on you, and where the radio goes quiet even when it shouldn't. This was one of those nights. Late March, cool but not cold, moon like a coin somebody dropped in the dirt. I was westbound on 60 with a dry van full of consumer electronics, sealed, tagged, insured up to my eyebrows. Dispatch had reminded me twice to mind your stops, in that cheerful tone that means they'd prefer the load to reach El Paso with the same number of boxes it left Dallas with. Somewhere outside of Pampa, a marked cruiser slid in behind me. You know the look. White and black, light bar low and mean, spotlight like an eye that never blinks. It sat there a beat, then flicked the red and blues once, quick, a tap on the shoulder. My stomach did the little drop it always does even when I'm right. I checked my mirrors, my speed 58 in a 65, and my log clean. Then the cruiser hugged my bumper and hit the lights for real. I eased to the shoulder, tires rumbling from waffle to gravel. I set my four-ways, rolled the window, killed my music, and put both hands at 10 and 2 where God and the government could see them. The wind carried that prairie smell, dust and old grass, and the faint tang of warm brakes. Headlights passed and didn't slow. The light bar painted my mirrors in patriotic panic. The officer approached on the passenger side. Standard safe. He was tall in the glass, hat brim making a black bar at eye level. He tapped the door politely with the knuckles of a gloved hand, and I thumbed the lock. He leaned in just enough to make me count the creases around his mouth. "Even in, driver," he said. "Highway inspection. Mind if I see your CDL registration and bill of lading?" "Mornin', officer," I said, because night is sometimes just the dress the morning wears. I handed the documents over. He held them under his flashlight's cone. The beam did its dramatic business. "You hauling electronics?" he asked, though the bill answered it. "Yes, sir. Dallas to El Paso." "You got any cash on you?" That was the first wrong note. They'll ask about weapons, sometimes about contraband if they are fishing, maybe how much fuel you're carrying if there's a weight concern. Cash. Not unless we're already talking fines or forfeiture, and we weren't. I felt a tiny muscle jump in my jaw. "Enough for coffee," I said. It was true. My company card bought fuel. My pockets bought donuts. "Open your glove and step out for me," he said. "Everything all right?" I asked like a man who didn't want to ask anything else. "Random inspection," he said. "We have a detail out tonight." I took a breath that didn't get to my lungs. The second wrong note drifted up behind him, back up. Two sedans pulled in fast, lights off, smooth as water. Not marked. Not even the ghost markings some agencies wear when they are trying to be coy. Both were the color of intentions. 3 more officers climbed out, ball caps, duty belts that didn't quite sit right, jackets that didn't quite match. One of them stretched like a man getting out of a long movie and said, "We got a live one with a high-dollar box." Trucker slang, our slang, not theirs. The first officer didn't flinch. "We're gonna pop the back and take a quick look," he said, returning my papers without looking at them. His thumb brushed over my CDL as if it had a texture he needed to feel. My seal's intact, I said. You sure you want that on your report? We break it, we reseal it, he said. Open up. My heart started doing the math my mouth didn't know yet. Legit stops have rhythms. They have radio chatter. They have a certain choreography, where the cruiser sits, how the flashlight moves when the hat stays on. And they have badges. He had one, but it sat wrong on the shirt, high and lonely like a party guest who showed up early and found out there was no party. You mind verifying your badge and unit for me? I asked, keeping my tone Sunday school polite. Dispatch'll want it for the inspection log. The wind laid a hand on the truck and let go. The officer's smile didn't reach any of the places a smile should reach. Step out, he said, just like before. Gloves on, hands where I can see him. Behind him, one of the ball-cap boys walked to my trailer doors and palmed the seal like it might decide to confess. The other two took up positions that weren't positions, loose and wrong. Angles you don't see in police videos, unless the video started with a hand-drawn badge. I keep a little list of choices in my head for moments like this. None are brave. All are calculated. Call 911. My phone would pick a tower out here the same way a cat picks a friend, rarely and for its own reasons. Slam and go. Not with 3 bodies flanking a 53-foot line. Play along and hope. The line between compliant and victim is thin and moves in the wind. So I chose the one sliver of sunlight I had. I picked up my CB mic and hit the button like I meant it. Westbound on 60 near mile marker 283, I said in a voice bigger than the cab. This is Coleman Transport Unit 417, being pulled by DPS for a trailer inspection. Badge verification, please. I put everything I could into DPS, like I was reminding the world what shape the letters should take. There was a beat. The officer didn't like it. His face did a thing a good face shouldn't do on duty. He leaned in through the window like the cab was a confessional and his sins needed company. No need to tie up the air, he said, soft. Keep it between us. The air tied itself up anyway. The panhandle is empty until it isn't. A voice I'd heard 100 times, the kind of voice that knows the color of every barn between here and Tucumcari, came back over 19. 417. This is Big Silo at the J&M lot. DPS runs 220 megahertz for verification, he said. Troopers don't ask you about cash, you hearing me? Another voice piled on, the kind with a tired smile in it. 417 break, Amarillo dispatch, you on. Got a driver asking for a badge check near 283. Silence. Then, clear as a bell rung inside a church, a new voice. Professional and bored in that way only a real dispatcher can sound. All units, be advised no DPS is working a traffic stop in that area at this time. Nearest marked is 10 miles east assisting a disabled motorist. Repeat, no DPS units assigned at mile marker 283 westbound. The officer's smile left home. Behind him, ball cap #1 tugged on the seal like it owed him money. Ball cap #2 said, too loud. We can have it popped in 20 seconds. Quit sermonizing. And ball cap #3, God bless his mouth, said, tell the lumper on receiving to sign off and we're golden. There it was. A lumper is a warehouse hand. Troopers don't say lumper. Troopers don't talk receiving on a roadside shoulder. Troopers don't show up in 3 unmarked sedans with matching bad posture. I kept my hands where he could see them and let my voice find the shape of a thing that might save me. Officer, I said, steady as prayer. Amarillo Dispatch just advised no units on this location. For everyone's safety, I'm going to proceed to the next well-lit area to clarify. You're invited to follow. Dashcam is recording. It wasn't, but he didn't need to know that. He reached for his belt like there might be an answer there. His jacket rode up and flashed a holster sitting high and wrong, cheap Kydex with a retention screw that hadn't met a range day. He and I both saw each other see it. "Stay put," he said. It came out sharp like a man who found a nail in his boot with his heel. The wind decided in my favor. A cattle hauler blew past in the passing lane, horn yawping, lights bright as a bar fight. The gust rocked us all. In the chaos, Ballcap #2 took 2 steps the wrong direction, toward cover that didn't exist, then corrected, then tried to look like that had been his idea the whole time. Their angles scattered. I put the truck in gear. He slapped the door frame. I said, I went. Not aggressive, not stupid. 45 with the 4-ways on, steady, lane discipline like a driver's ed video. The cruiser hesitated in my mirror. The unmarked sedans did not pull out. They rolled forward and tucked in behind the cruiser, then, all at once, killed their parking lights and let the dark take them. The cruiser bumped out, wavered, then pulled in behind me with the light bar still painting an America over my rear doors. 417, you rolling? Big Silo asked over the CB, voice tight now. Rolling, I said. Next lit exit. There's a Love's at 287 Junction, someone offered. Half-mile past the bridge. Trooper Unit 12 en route. Amarillo dispatch came back, calm and saltine. ETA 3. We reached the exit like 2 objects in a lab experiment, me the lab rat who got religion, him the cat who didn't like how the box felt anymore. I swung into the Love's lot, broad daylight by truck stop law. LEDs burning the dark off the diesel canopy. A cluster of pickups at the front. Neon promising showers and nacho cheese science. I parked angled toward the storefront. The cruiser rolled in behind, hesitated, then crawled past me like it had someplace else to be after all. It turned at the car pumps, made a slow box, and slid back toward the road. The license plate, half shadow, half glare, looked like it had been mounted by a man who didn't believe in level. 2 minutes later, a real Texas DPS Tahoe rolled in hot and then calmed itself, big and square and proper. The trooper who got out wore his hat like it mattered and his badge like it belonged. He walked the way authority walks, no hurry, no apology. "You the driver called for verification?" he asked. His voice had a little gravel in it, not performance gravel, just the natural kind. "Yes, sir," I said, handing him my documents. My hands shook in that after-the-storm way you can't schedule. "You stop for a marked unit?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Blue and whites, unit number," I told him. He nodded. Then he tilted his head, listening to his radio speak in his ear. "We're showing no unit by that call sign on shift," he said after a beat. "And no stop logged on your mile. You get a look at the officer." I described the smile that wasn't, the badge that sat high, the glove that tapped the door. I described the unmarked cars and the cash question and the way Ballcap used the word lumper like it was a password. He exhaled through his nose. "We've had rings out here," he said. "Folks impersonating. Usually they are lazy about it. Tonight sounds like they got ambitious." "You think they'd have cut the doors open?" I asked. "If they could have, they would have," he said. "They get your lights out, jam your radio, put a man at your window. Next thing you're in a caravan to a yard that disappears when the sun comes up. You did right getting to light and eyes. Next time, don't even take the shoulder. Call 911, verify on the low band. If it's us, we'll understand. If it isn't, you'll live." He took my statement. Another unit rolled by slow on the frontage, looking for sedans with gilt on their bumpers. A clerk from inside came out with 2 coffees and a thank you, like we were all playing assigned roles in a community play called How We Keep Each Other. When the trooper left, he tapped my door the same way the first one had, only this time the sound was right. The knuckles knew the metal. "Verify the badge by radio," he said. "Every time, even if it makes us cranky. Better cranky than carved up." I made El Paso on a schedule that would have disappointed me yesterday and felt like salvation today. On the dock, the receiver counted boxes like a priest counting rosaries. No shortages, no surprises. I slept like a man who had failed at sleep for a week and finally remembered how. After that, I changed. Not the job, freight is freight and bills are bills, but the reflex. When a light bar pops behind me now, my thumb goes to the CB and my other hand goes to the dispatch dial. I ask for a badge number and a unit, and I say the words verify by radio like they have power. If the shoulder is dark, I don't love it anymore. I go for a ramp, a lot, a place with people in it, even if it means a lecture and a citation I can frame. Sometimes I replay the moment in the mirror, the way those unmarked cars slunk back into the dark like they'd never been, and I think about how thin the line is between professional caution and being a story on a bulletin board with a ribbon stapled to it. I don't know where those guys went. I don't know if they found someone unlucky later or if the real DPS ran them out of the county. I know they're out there somewhere the way coyotes are, lean, hungry, smart enough to test fence posts with their paws. You can't stop for every shadow out here, but you don't have to let the shadows stop you either. You keep a list of choices close by. You make room in your mouth for the words that keep you moving. And when the wind decides again, and it will, you make sure it finds you with both hands on the wheel and your voice on the air where it belongs.